Welcome all to this in our seventh interview with the future leaders and our leaders of data. We're very happy to be joined by Professor David Hand for today's interview. So thank you, Dave, for coming along. So why are we doing this and what are the future leader interviews? So a bit of background to the scheme. The Royal Statistical Society has a commitment to promoting diversity and inclusion within statistics, data science and related data professions. And as part of that, we launched a program to support data professionals from ethnic minority backgrounds to become future leaders. And this was funded by the Academy of Social Sciences. We thank them for that. And it's very much motivated by the phrase, you cannot be what you cannot see. And it aims to celebrate the diversity of the data professions and empower data professionals from underrepresented groups to pursue leadership positions within the RSS, but also the wider data community and hopefully within their workplaces as well. Working with us to inspire future generations of statisticians, data scientists, data analysts, and all data professionals that we come to represent. In terms of why we've done these interviews, when we first got the group together back in early 2024, it was very easy to identify that leadership was one of the key themes that come out of our early discussions with regards to what was important to these future leaders. Where do they, who could they aspire to when looking at data leaders in data, how they could gain their own skills and knowledge, and where could they go to find that information? Is it membership bodies? Is it within their workplaces? Is it the wider network sections, local groups? And do the RSS have a role to play in that? The future leader suggested that a suitable list of suitable leaders they would like to approach or interview in hope to bring understanding to them whilst being able to provide this information to a wider audience. So here we are, 7 interviews later, with being held by different future leaders, and then we've had different interviewees coming in to talk about their careers, how they've approached leadership, and just a general conversation about how they've ended up in data as well. As we've seen the different ranges of backgrounds from people who've done stats degrees to engineering degrees and everything in between. So that's a bit of background to the session. What I'm going to do now is hand over to our 2 future leaders today. So I'll hand over to Kenneth first, who I'll just ask to introduce himself, and then we'll hand over to Travis before they'll begin the interview. So Kenneth, if you're ready, I will back away and hand over to you.
Thanks, Ricky. Kenneth here, Analytics Director in an advertising company. Before this, I did a PhD with Professor Jane Hutton and some behavioral science professors at the University of Warwick. Honestly, David, I'm super excited to be able to speak with you today. I've sort of read your works and they've been very helpful for my own professional career, both within the PhD and also when I was sort of starting out my career in data science consulting. Reading some of your applied works really helped frame how I go about certain problems when you face real world data, real world scenarios with real people. So I just wanted to say that it's a true pleasure, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm also delighted that you've read some of my sort of applied stuff, and we can talk about that later on. Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, and also I do speak about your applied stuff with Jane every now and then when I do have the chance, but yeah.
Do you want me to come in? Okay, so I'm Travis Newton, and I come from a completely different background to Kenneth, actually. So I am I'm a software engineering manager within Sky's observability and automation team. So my degree-wise, I went off and did a history degree, which is completely at odds with sort of like the data science world, but I've sort of fallen into it through sort of like developing I was a business analyst for over a decade, developed as a senior business analyst, and then sort of came into Sky in our group observability team. And what we do is we take data from various parts of the organization, from various Sky propositions, and present it back to teams, whether that be in in the form of an incident, whether like something's gone wrong, whether it be in the form of being able to make sales forecasts or be able to predict whether there might be an outage coming up or an incident or an event coming around that might not be a good event, but that someone in a support team team needs to go and deal with. So like that's kind of my background in the data world. And like I said, I'm very into data at the moment, but kind of fell into it as a bit of an accident. So like I'm very excited to kind of talk to you, but from a different perspective, because this is all very new to me.
Right. You're clearly very much at the cutting edge of applied data science work, actually where it all really matters. So, excellent.
Indeed. Yeah, we help make people make decisions based on stuff that's happening in their world. And then I suppose so it's down to me to kind of kick off the interview with you, David. So just to kind of start us off, then, can you give us sort of like an introduction to your career today, especially me, because as I said, I haven't read your work, so I'd really be keen on sort of understanding sort of how you've gotten to the position that you're in, sort of whether that was where you envisaged yourself going, whether this was all part of a big dream, the path you were going to go down, and whether there was something completely different that you could have been doing.
Yeah, that's put like that. Yeah, giving me a lot to think about, actually. Okay, I started with, actually, I'd go back further than this. When I was very young at school, I was bad at maths. This is a good starting point, I think. I was bad at maths. And then I was born in 1950, and gradually in the sort of 60s, people started to talk about computers, these electronic brains and so on, and I got intrigued by that. I was very interested in science fiction, so I guess that's why I got interested in electronic brains and computers. So I started to study them. In those days, binary arithmetic, things like that, and this sort of switched me on to maths. So this sort of redirected me, and I wouldn't say I became very good at it, but I became good enough. I did maths in the sixth form, and I went on to do a degree in maths. At the end of my degree in maths, I can remember talking towards the end my tutor and thinking about what I should do next, because I didn't have any great sort of career plans. I didn't want, like some people do, I didn't want to be a lawyer or an engineer or whatever. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And he suggested perhaps statistics. And I thought this was a great idea because it meant deferring my decision about what I would do with the rest of my life. The statistics, as you know, is applied everywhere. Data science is ubiquitous. It's applied, well, you name any discipline except for possibly literature, and statistics applies there. So I did a master's in statistics, and I really enjoyed that. So I stayed on to do a PhD. Interestingly enough, my master's in statistics was in a maths department, but my PhD was in an electronics department. It was on a subject which we then called pattern recognition, which is basically modern machine learning, essentially. But I did it in an electronics department, and it was really multivariate statistics. That's how I think of it. So I did my BA, my MSc, my PhD, and then I had to get a job, and I still didn't know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I'll jump to the end and then come back. I still don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life, but I've done some really interesting things. We'll perhaps have a chance to chat about those. So I actually joined Logica, a computer consultancy, but I didn't have your stickability, and I didn't manage to stay there to become manager and things like that. So I left there after less than a year and went to the Institute of Psychiatry, part of London University, as a postdoc. And I stayed there for 11 years. I became a lecturer, a senior lecturer. And then I left there to become head of statistics, professor of statistics at the Open University, which I really enjoyed. But then 11 years there, every 11 years I changed jobs. 11 years at the Open University, I went to Imperial, become head of statistics there. And then, 11 years after that, it was quite interesting. The Home Office approached me and said, would I like to be their chief scientific advisor? But at the same time, like a month later, while I was still thinking about that, a hedge fund called Winton Capital Management approached me and said, would I be interested in becoming their chief scientific advisor? And at the time, the university pension schemes were going through a tough, they were 14 billion pounds in the red or something, and there was some anxiety about what might happen in the future. So I thought, well, I better put some money in the bank. So I went to the hedge fund, which was really interesting because they've got some fascinating sort of technical data science statistical problems, and boy, have they got access to data. So, you know, from my point of view, and what drives me really is solving problems. And they had some really interesting problems. I have to say, I can remember one episode there, though. I was a delegate of potential Japanese delegation of potential Japanese investors was being wheeled around, and they brought me out as a sort of nerd to sort of, you know, show off. And I said, yeah, it's really exciting working here. Winton Capital's got all sorts of problems. And they looked at me, problems. I quickly backtracked. Challenges, statistical challenges. There's no problem with the company. Anyway, so where did I get to? Winton. Basically, when I left Winton 2000, after 8 years, in fact, I originally took a sabbatical to go to Winton, but I decided Winton rather than the Home Office because I thought it would be good to put money in the bank. Spent 8 years there because it was so interesting. But then I've left there. I've basically taken sort of early retirement from Imperial, but I am back there on a contract which allows me to essentially do what I like in terms of research, and I don't have any admin or teaching duties. So that's a whole run through of my career. And now I just sit here or go into Imperial occasionally, trying to think great thoughts. It's not as easy as I hoped it would be when I didn't have all these admin and teaching duties, but I'm trying.
And on that, how do you balance all of that? Like, you know, it feels like a lot. You've given me, like, I thought I had quite a varied career, but that feels like quite a huge career that you've got there with lots of experience in different types of organizations, different mindsets, I'm assuming, like, and different approaches to what they're trying to do with data as well. So, like, how have you balanced, like, you know, repositioned yourself each time you've come into one of those positions?
I suppose the constant of what I'm trying to do is solve problems. So I try to identify, talk to them, what are they trying to do, what are the challenges, and how can we use data to tackle those challenges, to inform those challenges and find answers. I should add that throughout my career, I believe statistics should be about solving real problems. So throughout my career, I've done a hell of a lot of consultancy work with all sorts of organizations. I used to do a lot of work with retail banks, credit scoring, credit card companies, that kind of thing. I was on the stats advisory boards for AstraZeneca, GSK, and so on. I spent 8 years on the board of the UK Stats Authority. Because I think statistics should not be an arid mathematical discipline. It's about data. It's about data science. It's about finding out what the challenges are, finding what you can see about those challenges from the data, and using those data to inform answers. So a lot of consultancy work. But the answer to your question is that I think there's a constant of my position, which is identifying and trying to tackle and solve problems.
Yeah, cool. And like, what's been the most interesting place that you think you've kind of held a role? What's really scratched your itch in terms of data science?
Oh wow. I don't think I'd like to single out a particular place. There are particular problems which have, for one reason or another, gripped my attention. I suppose in some sense I was lucky. As I said, my PhD was in what's now called machine learning. And that has been constant and has been growing in ability as computer power advanced throughout my career. So that's been a sort of constant theme and a sort of fascinating aspect of the things I've looked at. But I think if I think of the many organizations I worked with and the several organizations I worked in, I don't think any one of them in particular stands out as, yeah, that was really great. If it had, I'd still be there, of course. But I think they all had really fascinating problems to work on. Yeah.
Cool. Brilliant answer. And then obviously, as part of your career, you've also worked. You've been president of the RSS twice.
Yeah.
what can you tell us about that time in the role, and sort of like, what valuable experience that you took from sort of holding that position?
Yeah, okay. I think the RSS is a pretty great organization. And I think one thing that came out of it was the sort of power that comes working with a group of intelligent and like-minded people. I was always impressed and continue to be impressed more and more by the range of things, the variety of things, and the number of things that the society accomplishes with limited resources. It doesn't have that many sort of permanent staff to do things, and it calls on lots of volunteers who are always very pleased to help. And it does so much, replies to consultations, organises countless meetings and conferences and what have you, contributes to maths education, statistical literacy campaign and so on when I was president, all those sorts of things. It's for a small organisation, it punches way above its weight, I think. And of course, one sort of gradually became aware of this through one's career, but especially, I think, through being president of the RSS, it's really brought home to you how, what I said earlier, how statistics does impact all walks of life, from public policy, government, to medicine, health, science, astronomy, you name it. Statistics, data science is there at the centre of it.
Absolutely, I definitely echo that. Like I said, my job involves tons of doing that. Like you talk about machine learning, like that's one of the key things we use as part of our team to kind of we use machine learning to predict outages on our Sky Mobile network.
Right.
It's like
yes.
Fascinating stuff that like you just wouldn't think people do. Like that we use it all the time for, and things like whether people's adverts are playing properly, and
yes.
clever things like
that. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No.
Oh, yeah. If you don't mind, David, I just wanted, and thanks, Travis, I just wanted to ask, you mentioned that statistics is sort of across lots of different industries and areas. Do you think that people in these areas realize that as well?
I'm really glad you asked that question. Okay, so for maybe 3/4 of my career, I was spending a lot of effort trying to convince people how exciting statistics was. It was ubiquitous for a start. The way I sometimes put it is that through my career analysing data, I've seen things that nobody else has ever seen. They really couldn't. And by definition, statisticians, data scientists are there when discoveries are made. Somebody collects the data, it might be you, it might be somebody else, and then you look at the data and you look at the data. Aha! You've made the discovery. You've seen it before anybody else. You're there when the discovery is made. This is what makes it so exciting. Anyway, I spent decades trying to convince people that this was the most exciting of discipline. And usually getting the sort of response that it was possibly more exciting than accountancy, the sort of thing. But then the world changed. Computers, of course, gradually getting more powerful, enabling people and sort of interfaces, GUIs and all sorts of things, enabling people to use statistical data science tools. There's maybe a slight problem here, which I'll come back to, without getting involved in the technicalities of the code or whatever. And suddenly the world flipped. It was helped by the introduction of this phrase, data science, as opposed to statistics, because statistics still had this sort of Victorian dusty image, add up these columns of numbers and so on. But now it's switched to data science, where you had this flashy new computer, you press the button and it told you the answer, these sorts of things. So there was this big change. I can't remember exactly what your question was, but that I remember setting off with this answer when you asked the question, but I can't remember if we've got there yet.
I think I was, I think you kind of answered it because it seemed that initially people weren't really clear about what statistics was and didn't really see the impact, but now people are seeing it. But if you don't mind, I have to ask one more question, just because it's if you don't mind, Travis, honestly, and I'll stop after this.
But go on, yeah.
Okay, thank you. The one thing, David, that you mentioned, around this whole computers, data science, and people getting more from the discipline. I don't know what's the best way to phrase it, but one thing that I observe, working in the industry and speaking with colleagues across different backgrounds who interface with data is, and reading your LinkedIn posts, not yours, but my LinkedIn posts all around data, machine learning. There's a lot of emphasis around, the use of models / algorithms. But one thing that I don't really see is discussions around how do you describe data properly. When you talk about working with data and discovering something, exploring the data, it's not always through just models. It's a lot of times through describing the data, plotting the data. What do you think about this? What do you think about the importance of, just taking a step back from the end result of an outcome, your modeling outcome or whatever, and sort of like, how would you discover new things if you with EDA, for example, with describing data? I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that is critically important. It's tied in with certain risks that we have now because we have these increasingly powerful computers. I think understanding the data is paramount. You need to know where the data came from, how it was collected, what its shortcomings are. Do the data really represent, is it really representative of what you think it is, or is it subtly biased and distorted in some way? What about missing values? They used to say that 90% of solving the problem was well, there are two aspects here. 90% of solving the problem is formulating it, but then, if you like, 90% of the rest is cleaning the data, getting the data ready for analysis, making sure it is describing what you think it's describing accurately before you can actually try to summarize it, extract an answer from it. Because if it's not describing things accurately, no wonder you might get a nonsensical answer. And I think there is a real risk here, especially with the very powerful computers, algorithms, model building systems we have now, that people don't really appreciate the risks. If I take a machine learning algorithm, I can throw data at it, any data, it will give me an answer. Even if after data are missing, it may well not have systems to identify that things are, missing values are coded as 99 instead of NA or something like that, and it might not reject the thing. It might take, we've got a lot of 99-year-olds in this data set without you being aware of what it's doing, So I think the risk is that the facility with which these modern systems can be used means that people are not spending enough time looking at the data, thinking, is it an accurate record of what I'm trying to summarize and trying to describe? Will it enable me to solve the actual problem, or is it going to mislead me? I think this is critically important. As I say, in the old days when, here's an example. If a statistical analysis, a factor analysis, say, would take you 3 months by hand inverting all those matrices, you'd think very carefully about A, whether it was the right thing you wanted to do. Is it answering the right question? B, are the data going to be good enough to do that? If it's going to take 3 months out of your life, you'd think very carefully. But if it's now going to take as long as it takes me to press this button to answer that, what the hell? If that doesn't give me a good answer, or if I'm not happy with it, I'll try something else. You don't, the emphasis is no longer there. But there are a number of examples of problems, many examples of catastrophes and so on, lost fortunes, which have occurred because people haven't taken enough care with the data to check that the data are describing what they believe it to be describing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Like as you said, that the power of computing is we are going at 100 miles an hour, aren't we, in that respect, and
Yes.
And it enables us to make mistakes at breakneck speed as well as do really good things at breakneck speed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And it's easier to make mistakes than get the thing right, I think. So
Yeah, I mean, Sorry, in terms of questions, I think that was all of mine I had for you. I think Kenneth has some as well now.
Oh,
Right.
okay, wonderful. Yes, and thank you very much. I think, David, if we could start, I really enjoyed the sort of discussions, but maybe we could sort of pivot away for a bit. And if you could share with us, who has inspired you both within and outside of the statistical discipline, and then as a follow-on, what sort of advice would you give your younger self or other people who are,
Yeah.
are going through their career right now?
Yeah. I suppose people who have inspired me, I suppose there are two classes. There are people who could run committees very well. And I've tried to learn from them about how, because, I've been on a lot of committees, chaired a lot of committees, and getting them to function on time, giving everybody an opportunity to contribute, and so on. People who can do that well have inspired me. And on the other hand, there are sort of technical people who have inspired me. The statisticians, David Cox obviously is a brilliant scientist, but John Gower, who used to work at Harpenden, and I worked closely with him we wrote a couple of books together and so on. He showed me ways of looking at even simple things which I thought I understood in novel ways, and showed me sort of how you could go down in depth and things. And then there was another statistician, David Bartholomew. He developed a beautiful theory of latent variable models, understanding what was going on, describing data sets by postulating sort of hidden variables within them. So there are a number of people like that who had particular technical aspects which inspired me. So the two classes of people, the technical people and the people who could run committees and things like that. And I think in terms of, what was the second part of your question? Advice.
Just career advice.
Yeah. Okay, I suppose there are a number of things I would say. One is seize opportunities. People are often, should I do this? Shouldn't I do this? Will I be good enough at it? Go for it. Actually, there's one thing I've observed over my career. People that you might not think would be very good at a job, a promotion and so on, often grow into it. And so if one has anxiety about oneself like that, go for it. You will probably be forced to grow into it. But, that's the first thing. Again, if you can find a good mentor, that's good. Chances are they've been through whatever you're wrestling with at the moment and can sort of advise you about that sort of thing. How do they cope with it? What did they learn from it? Secondments are a good idea. I think probably especially in a discipline like data science and statistics, because we're back to the ubiquity of statistics and so on. It's applied all over the place. And what you learn in one area is almost certain aspects of it will be applicable in another. And you will gain breadth and understanding of different ways of looking at things. And perhaps I can say at a broader level, don't worry about changing jobs or directions. This is probably less of a problem nowadays when people change jobs more often than they used to when I was young. But don't worry about it. Almost always aspects of what you've learned or the extra maturity you've acquired from a different job will enhance your effectiveness in a new one. So don't worry about changing jobs. If Travis wants him to switch into working for an advertising agency or something completely different health area, what you do now will almost inevitably mean that you'll be really informed and can be helpful. You'll have to learn things, of course, the details of the new area, but your skills are portable. Is really what I'm saying. What else? There are sort of downstream lessons about of advice. One is schedule your time. This is sort of critically important. It's all too easy to get up in the morning, I've got to do this, and then spend the whole day doing it and forgetting about or not having time for the other things you've got to do. Another thing I would say is, and this is sort of advice for negotiators actually, and this is to put yourself put yourself in the shoes of people you disagree with. If they're arguing with you, why? They're almost certainly not just bloody-minded, awkward people. They're probably disagreeing with you because they have beliefs or understanding or information or something that you don't have. So, try to put yourself in their shoes. Where are they coming from? And that enables you to sort of either converge on something or help or decide which is a more sensible approach. I've other sort of minor pieces of advice, like when so I've written more than 30 books. And in writing, I would say always give yourself time to rewrite it, to write it, put it aside, come back to it after a little gap. Because when you do that, you will think, my God, how could I write anything so silly? And then you will write it much better. So, and so on. So.
And thank you. That was very nice to hear. Do you mind sharing, having served in a variety of positions and also worked in a variety of industries, how do you what, now that you've worked with so many and been exposed to so many different sorts of folks, what are, in your view, the sort of key challenges around increasing statistical literacy in the general population? Let's say if we take the UK as a whole, and here I'm just going to assume most people don't really like maths and have no real clue about statistics. I mean, I've been sort of reading about numeracy across the population. So I would love to hear your thoughts, on that topic.
How to increase numeracy in the population? Yes. I'm probably
and statistical literacy, right? I mean, they're kind of interlinked, but I think.
I'm probably not the right person to ask, but I suppose where I come from, my sort of background would be to try to inspire them. People aren't going to learn it if they can't see a reason for learning it, or not going to understand it if they can't see a reason for understanding it. So to try to inspire them with the excitement, and it doesn't have to be at a deep technical level. You don't have to inspire them to want to go away and take degrees in statistics, but just to sort of say, look, because of this understanding and you wouldn't put it this way, but because of this understanding I've got, I can see things, I can understand things. It's that sort of way of getting them to see that there's value in statistical literacy. So, the problem of overcoming maths aversion, I'm no good at maths, that kind of thing, is a much deeper one, I think. Obviously tied with probably the most important part of our education, which is right at the beginning, the sort of infant school and junior school level rather than universities. By the time kids have reached university, they're hopefully able to motivate themselves because they've gone to the trouble of going to university and so on. But when they're young, they're being exposed to ideas. And of course, if you get a teacher saying, I'm no good at maths, that's not a good role model. You need people who can say, look, isn't this exciting? And, it's true that some people are good at maths and some people are bad at maths or not so good at maths. But that's not a reason, and this is important, it's not a reason to turn off. You understand what you can. Like I said right at the start, I don't think I'm that good at maths. I'm, my peer group studying maths when I was a student, there were a lot of people who are much better at maths than me. But of course, you combine that with other skills, other attributes, and I think it's part of. This is going to sound silly. It's part of a rounded person, if you like. So I do think it's important that we should encourage people to see that there's value in statistical literacy, in numeracy, and not to be put off trying, really.
Thank you. And have you, I guess maybe this is a question around future leadership and developing mentoring, for example. How would you, given your experience, what is the best approach to developing future leaders, whether within your team formally, within an organization, or as part of like a wider initiative. Do you have any sort of advice on that?
Yeah, I think the most important piece of advice I can give to any current leader who is nurturing people would be look after your people. They're working for you, they're in your team. Protect them, if you like, from the rest of the organization or from what it is that's, from the competing departments. I don't know. As I said, in the context of mentors, and in this case, you will quite likely have been through the experiences they're going through. They are struggling to get to grips with the job. They're not sure what their career direction should be or they want it to be. And you can share your experiences with them. Few of us haven't sort of struggled with these things in the past. So, you can be honest and say, yeah, I had this problem, whatever. I do think also that it's important to recognize that people have different skills. Not only that, but you as a leader and future leaders want teams of people with different skills. The last thing you want is a team of people who all know exactly the same thing and can do exactly the same thing, unless it's a call center, perhaps, I don't know. But you want people with different experiences and insights who can say, oh yeah, but if you look at the problem this way, boom, there's an answer. Oh, I didn't think of that. Wouldn't have occurred to me. You need people. You want a team. A team is people with different skills, basically. And one other thing, advice about being a successful leader and nurturing people is make it clear that they'll get through it. Whatever problem they're currently wrestling with, it's going to pass. and they'll come out on the other side. And, they'll probably have learned, grown, matured from it. But it's going to pass, yeah.
Thank you. And the last one on the paper is what is, having gone through your own career, what do you think are some of the things that have helped you achieve what you have achieved from a professional point of view?
Yeah. Working with the right people for a start, there's no question about that. Identifying good people to work with, people, as I say, with complementary sort of skills. I've written a lot of books, many of them are co-authored. So I've, found people. I mentioned John Gower. He knew things I didn't know, no question. All my co-authors did. And that was really great. And then in the teams I've led, finding people, some people were great at looking at the details, others less so, big picture people. Put them together and you can create something. Sorry, can you what was the
I
question?
just wanted to get your thoughts, what has sort of helped you?
What's helped me?
Yeah,
So those
correct.
things. Also, I think, yeah, I don't know, working, whatever you do, even if you're a programmer like I was at the start of my career, whatever you do, even if you're just sitting there analyzing data in front of a screen, you're also working with people. So the ability to work with people, take things from them, give things back to them, engage, exchange ideas, that is probably the most important thing, I think.
Thank you. Maybe one question. David, in your background, I see some small little squares. Are they dice or?
Yes.
Okay.
I should tell you, and if you've read my book, The Improbability Principle, you'll know that I have a large collection of dice. I've got all sorts of dice. I've got spherical dice. They're cleverly weighted, so they always come up showing a number. I've got weighted dice from crooked dice from a casino. I've got things called mechanics dice, they've got the same number on opposite faces, just 3 numbers on the 3 pairs of eyes, and you can't tell that they've got false numbers because you can only ever see 3 sides. I've got all sorts of dice, big ones, little ones, and I've got bookends, which are dice as well, which are the little cubes that you can see.
Oh, right, okay.
Very on brand.
Yeah.
Well, I'll come in there unless Travis or Ken, if you have another question for David. If there's anything else, I'll summarize what's been a really good interview, really. So thank you, David, for taking the time. There's some really good stuff there that's come out of this talk. Some of the sound bites I liked especially was stats should be about solving real world problems. I like that with the rise of computer programming and machine learning, it enables us to make mistakes just as quickly as it does to make advances. But stats is really at the heart of discovery. When you're using data, and that's where you find discovery. I think that's true. I remember speaking to one of our members, Jen Visser-Rogers, about her work on the COVID vaccine and how by analyzing the data, she was one of the first people to find out that the vaccine was going to be usable from analyzing the data, and what a moment that must have felt like, and speaking to her about what that felt like for her, and given what the society was going through, it's amazing that people don't think about that. And that leads me on to the next point that came out, is you don't have to be an expert in maths and stats to understand the value in it and to get excited by it. And I think that's something we could definitely take out into the public domain, especially when we've just gone through a general election. That's where understanding can be, is pivotal about how stats are communicated, how to get excited by it, what it is you're thinking about. Census collection is another one. Examples of how the census collection and how the data is applied can then prove to advancements in your area. These are all good examples. So it's full of nuggets in this conversation, and there were some really good things from past interviews I've seen come up again and again. Seize opportunities, go for it. Know that you value your own knowledge and expertise. You're in the room for a reason. And also there was another one about putting yourself in other people's shoes is come up a lot, and I think we have a joke at the RSS saying, I'm a statistician, not a magician, that you can't come up with the magic numbers for everyone. But if someone's disappointed with the numbers and the answers you do come up with, maybe understand why and what it is they're thinking about and how they're understanding, how they're coming from it. So really, really good points from that. So yeah, thank you again, all of you, for your time today. It's been really, really useful. It's been a fantastic call.
Thank you all very much indeed. Some really great questions there. You've given me things to think about as well. So thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, David.
And I didn't want to jump in and say it, but if David won't commit to one, I'll say his best post generally was the RSS presidency, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
But no, thank you all again, and we'll end the recording there, and we'll speak to you all soon. So take care, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
Ricky, Alfie, Travis. See you in a bit.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, David.
Bye.